And a good morning, good Friday morning to everybody out there. We hope you've had a wonderful week and are looking forward to a great weekend. No matter where you are, make it a great day because you get to choose your emotions. So we hope you choose happiness because choosing to be a crap magnet can really kind of be a downer for everybody. So welcome to Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. I'm Frank Spillers. Kim's doing another show here in about 25 minutes or so on creating healthy environments and creating a healthy body for yourself. So after this one, if you want to catch that, it is Healthy Living in the Midwest off our Facebook page. And so you can go to there and catch that. It's at noon Central Daylight Time. We are wrapping up here our week of creating your entrepreneurial board. Now, why are board of directors so important? Well, for one thing, in a nonprofit, if you have a nonprofit, it is a part of the law. I mean, it's a legal structure. When you incorporate as a nonprofit organization, you need to have a board of directors. Now, we're not going to get into it, but just because you're a nonprofit organization does not mean you can't make money. I mean, you need to make money. That's your budget. Nonprofit just means that your profits go back into the organization. It doesn't, like for a for-profit business, you live off the profits, but a nonprofit, you would reinvest in that organization. So you're constantly reinvesting in your organization. Also, just because you're a nonprofit does not necessarily make it a tax-deducted donation to that nonprofit. There are different sections of the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS code, tax code, that creates different structures for the nonprofit. So you create your nonprofit organization through your state, your Secretary of State's office. That creates your corporation. Then you choose the designation of your nonprofit as a tax entity. And most nonprofits that you look at and you're most aware of probably are like your churches and or the foundations. They are 501c3s. And those type of nonprofits, that's a designation by your by the Internal Revenue Service. Also, you have a 501c6, which is a Chamber of Commerce, economic development organization. But there's a whole bunch of different codes in there. And so not all nonprofits are all tax coded the same, and all tax coded is not all nonprofits. So that's just the legality of it. I'm not going to get into that too deeply. You just want to check that out and make sure that you're doing things the right way as your board. And that's part of looking at your board structure that we talked about on Wednesday or Tuesday, I think it was, of looking at your bylaws, looking at your structure. How are you structured? Is everything working towards your needs? Because your nonprofit was formed for a specific purpose, and that is to add value to what that purpose was for or is for. And you need to look at that on an annual basis. And so on Wednesday, we talked about the importance of a retreat. And I want to get into that of the retreat, and because your board creates the environment for your organization. Choosing a nonprofit as an individual, choosing a nonprofit, which we talked about on Monday, choosing a nonprofit is really important for you as an individual, that it meets your talents and your skills and your abilities. When you can find that, then join the nonprofit. Now, as a nonprofit, you want to look for board members that match your needs. But an effective board member will do this. They'll encourage creativity. Effective board members come on a board to look for new solutions to maybe some old problems you have swept under the rug, problems that you don't want to address. Nonprofits are creating value and looking at that. Nonprofits serve a specific function in your community that can address some of those needs and move that forward, that can do different things than a for-profit business does. Okay, and so when you look at your nonprofit organizations and you want to become involved in that, you want to look for an organization that matches your talents. And as a board member, you want to really place a high value of trust. You want to serve with others that you might have relationships with that you trust, because your executive director, your organization, your membership that you are serving looks to you to make creative decisions, looks to you to make the decisions that are sound for that organization and for that organization to move forward. And that takes an extreme amount of trust among the members. And that is one of the purposes of a board retreat, is it gets you out of the environment that you normally sit in. So that boardroom that you're looking at, and you're making those decisions on the direction of the organization. All right, and you're looking at the agendas, you're looking at the budgets, you make sure that your mission and your vision is funded on a monthly type basis, maybe even a bi-monthly type. Maybe you get together more than once a month for that organization. You also will be in charge of some of those committees. All right, and so you're getting those committees in between board meetings. You're getting those committees to meet, because the real work of an organization works in committees, and that's where the members become involved. That's where the activities start to be planned. That's where the focus is a little more focused, microscopic on that activity that you're doing. So those committees then create the whole structure. So when you go to a board meeting, though, you're looking at the organization, you're looking at the greater value of the organization. When you're in the committees, you're looking at specifically the duty of that committee. So you do have different types of relationships. You do have different types of duties as a board member. Now, as a board member, to be an effective board member, you want to set that environment. Also, you want to place a high value on other people's opinions, because it's not just your opinion that to guide that direction. It is the collaborative opinion of the whole board, and that is creating that collaborative vision. We're going to talk a little bit. Then, as you're sitting there on your board, you want to really embrace those who are creative, but you want to focus more on innovation and not just invention. You don't want to create things to do. You want, how can we do things better? That's innovation. How can we do this differently than we have done it before? That takes a specific type of a board member, because you don't want to come on a board and say, we've always done it this way before, because you're not growing then. If you have done it this way before, you're not growing, you're not moving forward at all. All you're doing is maintaining, and when you maintain, you move backwards. You're not changing with the environment. You're not transitioning into meeting new needs. Needs don't stay the same. You have to meet a need, make it better, and then move on. You have to create an environment that is transitioning all the time, transitioning into meeting the needs of the environment that's created. And that takes a creative board member that looks at innovation, not just inventing new ways and new things to do or new projects to create. You are actually innovating new processes. Because it's all about relationships. It's all about creating that environment to where people get along, to creating those great relationships where people thrive and you're uplifted. Okay, so as a board member, you also want to appreciate the power of a dream. Appreciate the power of a dream. I mean, that's when you go into a retreat, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be dreaming. So let me talk just a little bit about what you want to do during that retreat. All right, we've talked a lot during our programs over the course of the last 4 months. We've talked a lot about vision. Vision is the why. Every year when you get together for a board retreat, you want to take multiple days. You want to take a couple of days to really dig into, why do you have an organization? Is your organization doing what it's supposed to do? And with that organization, do you know why the organization exists? Why do you exist? And if you can figure out that why, you can figure out that vision. Now, that vision is the perfect picture of the future you wish to create. Your why is going to create the vision. Your why, if you are doing your why as an organization, you are creating the environment to where the perfect picture can exist. And that is what you really want to do, is figure out that why. Why would this organization, or what would you do if this organization would, what would you do when your organization looks, likes, and acts relating to your interest, right? How would that organization look? What would it look like? Create that vision. What would you be doing? Create that vision. How would your organization be acting? Create that vision. How would people be responding to your organization? Create that vision. How much money would this vision attract? Because people don't give money to dreams. They give money to a vision and a plan to get to that vision. A vision attracts investment. A vision attracts investment. I can't stress that enough. When you have a solid collaborative vision that people can get behind, your funding will be attracted. You will attract the money that you need. It's not, let's see how much money we can collect and then craft a vision to spend the money. That's backwards. You craft a vision that's compelling enough for people to give to that vision because they're excited about it. It creates that emotion. So to create that vision, what we do is we come into a community and we start working months before your retreat. Because if you don't have the foundation of the research done, you don't have information your board can make for a future vision. And so we come in, we look at the quantitative and qualitative type of information, hard data versus perceptions of your people, and we create some themes you can actually focus on. What are the opportunities that your community has that you can grow in the area of 3 different areas: economy, people, and place. How's your economy doing? How are your people doing? How is your community of place? And those 3 areas really create your community. How can we move that forward? And the basis of that is by relationships. You can have all the hard data you want, but if you have bad relationships in your community, nobody's going to stay and nobody wants to live there. You can have all the great playground equipment that you have. You can have a great swimming pool. You can have a great splash pad. You can have great city parks. You can have a great infrastructure. You can have great things. But if you don't have great relationships in your community and people get along and people talk and create a great environment in your community, people aren't going to be attracted. You will not draw them in. And so you really have to look at your environment, not just the data, not just the hard data of the quantitative stuff that you can collect, that you go out on the census or you go out on the Esri site or you go on to all those economic sites. You have to look at the perceptions of people of how they view your community, because it's those perceptions that create the environment. It's those perceptions that are human. And the individual creates that environment. So you have to do both of those. You have to look at the hard data and you have to look at your perceptions of your community. Then you get your folks together and your board together for a multi-day process. And to look forward, you have to look backwards. So when we build a culture with purpose, and we help you build that culture with purpose, we ask you this. Looking back 25 years, what were you doing? What were you doing in the community? What was happening in the community? What was the environment like? What were things being done? What were the organizations involved? Who were the leadership? What kind of leadership was it? Look at all of those environmental things that you would look at today, but you look at it 25 years in the past, and then you make that list. And then you say, okay, looking at our list, here's our list of 25 years ago, because 25 years ago created the culture you're living in today. Let me say that again. 25 years ago is created the culture you are living in today. Because that's about a generation. That's a generational look at the culture that is creating that culture. So 25 years ago, you were age 0. You are now a 25-year-old leader. 25 years ago, you were that culture. You grew up in that culture. You grew up in that environment. So that is the environment that you know. And so as you look at that, what was happening 25 years ago, you then say what's happening now and compare the list. Who are the leaders? I mean, the same questions. Who are the leaders? What are they doing? What is the environment like? What's the community like? And then if you haven't changed a bit, you are just doing the same things in the same way and you're expecting different results. So it's that 25-year comparison advantage that you do, that you are looking back to look forward, because your past actions have created the current environment. Right? And then you have to ask yourself four questions. Okay? And these 4 questions are, number 1, if we're meeting 3 years from now, what has happened during the 3-year period for you to feel happy about your progress? So we're looking back 25 years. We're comparing 25 years ago to now. But then if you're looking at crafting that vision, you have to say, if we're meeting 3 years from now, what would really satisfy you to say we have created progress? I'm happy about the progress that we have made. What has to happen? Number 2 is, let me get this going. There we are. Okay, what are the biggest opportunities that you would need to focus on to capture and achieve those things? So what would make you happy now? What are the biggest opportunities that you need to focus on? And so we look at those theme analysis. We look at the themes that have been created by the quantitative and qualitative research in the foundation of your planning process. We look at those themes and you say, what are the biggest opportunities that you need to focus on to capture those things that you want to achieve in the next 3 years? What are those type of opportunities? And then you can look at what strengths do you need to develop? Do you have the skills and the abilities around the board and in your membership that you need to develop those opportunities that you don't have right now? So you have to capture those new skills and abilities. Maybe your board needs to be trained differently. Maybe your community needs to be trained differently. Those are the types of questions and analysis that your board has to make during this board retreat. And the 4th question that you want to ask is, what are the biggest dangers you'll have to face and deal with in order to achieve progress? So you're looking at what would make me happy in 3 years of the progress? What are the biggest opportunities? What could we focus on? What's the low-hanging fruit that we can do? Okay, and then what are the strengths we need to develop? And what skills do we need to capture? What do we need to do to educate ourselves to create and to match those opportunities? And then what are the biggest dangers? What are some of those obstacles that we might have to encounter in order to move forward? So that is, where do we want to go and how are we prepared to meet those, to get there, right? And the steps that we want to get there. These are the things that you really want to do, because you are looking back 25 years, and then you're looking at your present. You're asking, where do you want to be? What would make you happy in 3 years? Now you want to then connect your current projects to your future vision. Your future vision is the picture of the future you wish to create, remember. Now, what have you done in the past? This is where you're at. You're looking at your circumstances, where you're at but you're also looking at where do you want to go? What results do you want? And then your actions. So now you're connecting your current projects to your future vision, those goals and long range. Because if you want to create that future vision, if what you're doing right now is not going to get to your vision, then you're not doing the right things right now. You need to drop them. You need to get rid of those. Right? Because what you're doing right now needs to be actions to get you to that vision. And then what are those obstacles that won't help you get to those visions, that will be in your way to help get to those visions? Now, being a true board member and being true to the organization, you might have to look around the boardroom and analyze and think about the vision that you want to create. And as you're looking around the board of the vision that you want to create, you might not be the correct board member. You might not be involved in the organization anymore that you joined. The organization has changed to reflect the environment to where it needs to go. You have to look at those needs and the solutions to get the outcome. And when you're looking at those needs and your organization is part of the solution to those needs have changed over time and the solutions are going to change over time. But maybe you are not changing with the organization. So maybe it's time that you drop off the board. Because when you come out of your board meeting, you want to have gone through the 3 conditions of consensus. And that is, 1, do you understand the question or issue at hand? So as you're going through your board meeting, do you understand all the questions? Do you understand the direction? Do you understand what people are talking about? If you don't understand, are you asking the right questions? If you don't understand, are you speaking up? Are you making sure that you understand where the direction is going? So do you understand the question or the issue at hand, right? All the way through this board meeting. These are the conditions of consensus. And then when a decision is made, you have to sit there and think about, okay, are you willing to live with the decision even though it's not your favorite option? Because you would have brainstormed a lot of different directions. You know where you're going to be going. But if you don't agree upon that, okay, can you live with it? Can you live with that decision and that option that the consensus of the board said this is a direction that we're going, right? Because everybody doesn't always agree on everything. We're not looking for agreement on everything. That's a different process where we find common ground. Common ground is agreeing on everything. Common ground is what do we all agree upon? That's common ground. Consensus is different. Consensus is how much can we all agree, even though we don't like it, and even though it's not our option, and I'm going to vote against it. Okay, consensus is the majority of folks want this to go. Okay, and so are you willing to live with that, even though it's not your option as a board member? And the third condition of consensus is one of the more important ones is this. As you walk out of the room and back into the community, are you willing and do you pledge to support the decision both publicly and privately? What will kill your organization more quickly than anything is board members who are silent. They don't agree with the organization. They don't agree with the direction that it was done. And then they walk out of the room. They walk out of the planning with everybody thinking that this is the direction of the organization. But there's those couple board members or the one board member that will go down to the coffee shop or they will go someplace else and they will start talking about this dumb organization just made this decision. And you remain on the board. If you cannot meet those 3 consensus of options, you're not a good fit for that board. You need to maybe back away. You need to either change your mindset, you need to change your skill set, or just get off the board. You need to back away from that organization because you're not a good fit to lead that organization. And you then become one of the barriers for that organization to move forward. So we want to make sure that your organizations are moving forward. And so we look at our 5-institute design process. And we're going to be going through this a little bit deeper next week as we talk about rural communities' competitive advantage in taking advantage of broadband capabilities. Okay, so come on back, because we're going to be talking about a strategic advantage of a teleworkforce, how communities are now, how communities can position themselves to attract people, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of environmental change by the atmosphere, by how people are thinking about their community and how people are thinking about growth within their community. So come on back and we'll talk about all that all next week. And then one of our interviews next week is looking at how a organization, a regional organization in Appalachia, Eastern Kentucky, one of the most high poverty rates in the country, how they have turned their economy around and how they created an organization that is actually growing population and attracting new businesses and attracting entrepreneurs. And so come on back next week and we'll be talking about our competitive advantage, your competitive advantage of how that can happen in rural America. But we want to look at right here is the Community Prosperity Institute. And that Community Prosperity Institute is your visioning process. That is the process to where we look at how are your people doing? How is your economy doing? How is your community of place doing? And how do we find those themes, those opportunities that you can best plan on to create a vision and then create those goals to get you to that vision. But how can we create that vision, create the economy, create the organization that you want that's going to take you into the direction that you want to go? Your organization, okay, has the long term, really needs to create an education program that's going to enhance your board, enhance your membership. That is creating leadership programs, that is creating an engagement program, that is creating a community builders program that works building a regional approach, not just your siloed community approach. That's where the Community Prosperity Institute comes in as the starting mechanism to move into the cauldron of collaborative leadership, the collaborative leadership organization, creating that environment that helps build leadership. And leadership is building relationships. The engagement, building an understanding, building civility within your community to where people get along, and building relationships between communities in your region. Your workforce does not just come from your community, it comes from a region. We talk to many communities to where they have as many people coming into work that commute into their community to work as commute someplace else. So they're just exchanging a workforce during the day. But you need strong communities to support your workforce, and strong communities don't fight each other. Strong communities work together to build a region. And that's important to know. Because as we do our Community Prosperity Institute and as we do our 5-institute design process, what we really look at is building the outcome. We look at your needs and your solutions to that for the 5 Community Institute design process, because our outcome is building resilient community placemaking. Making your communities resilient during this time of COVID. How are you going to come out of this specific time? It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of planning, but it takes commitment on your part. And if you're really committed, and that is committed versus interest. Interest, you're just going to do what's convenient for you. You're just going to do what's comfortable. You're just going to do what you've done in the past. That's interest. But if you're really committed, you're going to do what it takes. And what it takes these days, because our environment has changed, our workforce is changing, our opportunities are changing, our investment needs to change. And so do our skills, and so do the way we look at economic development, and so do the way we look at how do nonprofits and how do board of directors fit into this new way of doing things, and what value can we add. So as we build this new environment, it's going to, for you as an organization to commit to doing whatever it takes. And it's a long-term process. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't happen overnight, because you didn't get here overnight, and it's not going to change overnight. And that's why we look at generational planning. That's why we look at a 25-year window of opportunities and a 25-year of how we're going to change the culture and the environment. So come on back next week as we start talking about your broadband capabilities, and we start talking about your opportunities of how can you build your community and how can you build a strategic advantage opportunity for your community and for your region. I'm Frank Spillers. This has been Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. Catch us, share us, hit the subscribe button. Come on back. We're happy to have you. And have a great weekend. Remember, wear your mask if you go out in public. Mask up, stay safe, keep other people safe. I'm Frank Spillers. This has been Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. Have a great weekend, people.